Hey there, and welcome to the A.D.K channel. I, of course, am Dave. There's no Kirk and no Andy with me tonight, but what I do have with me tonight are the band Them Bloody Kids. Welcome to the channel.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you very much for agreeing to speak to us tonight, or me tonight. It's a great privilege for me to have you on here. I've been checking out your music for the last sort of couple of weeks since we've been talking. I was listening to the stuff again today. Very, very impressive. But before I get talking to you about your actual music, I'd like to get a little bit of background about the band. So could you just take me about how long's the band been going, when you formed, and of course the very important thing, band name. What does it mean? Where did it come from? Is there a concept behind it? Or is it like 99% of the bands, they went, we just picked a name and that stuck? Over to you.
I guess we start with the name, as that was the last question. I was a bit of a, what's the word for it? A bit of a rapscallion in school.
Scallywag.
Scallywag. Yeah, all of those things. So yeah, I was just a bit of a, always getting the older people shouting at me to get in line, and I just sort of never liked authority. So Them Bloody Kids sort of worked with that sort of vibe, and the songs are all a bit sort of political and edgy and sort of like, rebellious. Rebellious. So that sort of encapsulated that whole vibe that we were bringing to the table with that first album. And yeah, that all started in 2018, 2019. Yeah, 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I started the band with my then manager at the O2 Kentish Town Forum. We started based on our love of System of a Down. And then about 2 years later, a year and a half later, Antonio joined the band. And
we met in uni. Basically, we were doing different courses in ICMP.
Yeah.
And it worked out.
Yeah, it was great.
I saw this post of this guy just posting about Them Bloody Kids, and I was like, okay, sounds fun, sounds interesting.
Yeah, and it all sort of stemmed from there, and we started. Yeah. I mean, the last release, Antonio wasn't actually on the last release, but this release that we've just been in the studio to do is going to be, it's exciting because he's been in the band for a while now. We've been playing with these old tracks, and now it's got a chance to like stamp his name on the band, which is great, and the tracks are better for it, 100%.
Well, we'll come to those once we go through some of the old ones in a second. Do you know what? When you said about Them Bloody Kids, the weird thing is I actually use that in my terminology when I talk about things nowadays, because I'm at the age where I actually do say bloody kids. I don't know. I'm kind of I'm now mid-40s, so I get away. I'm allowed to call people Them Bloody Kids. I feel like I'm in that age group now. So, but it is true. I do actually use that, which I never thought I would. But there you go. I was actually quite surprised because the first EP came out in 2019, which means if you were kind of formed around 2018, 2019, your turnaround for that first EP was a very quick turnaround.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Were the tracks already kind of pre-written, or?
So, I've been writing songs for a long time, and so I had a backlog of like songs that were sort of more aggressive and punky and sort of like in that sort of metal scene, and I was more in sort of rock and indie rock sort of scene. Like this is like 5 years ago now, and so I had all these heavy tracks and I wanted to bring them to a band. I had the opportunity to go with Darren and start writing. So for about a year, we got this catalogue of songs together, and then took on the studio with the best 5, expecting to do the other 7 in the next year on. And then they were all the album was a collection as a whole, but the first 5 just happened to be the first ones that we wanted to get out there.
Right, because I mean, going through that first EP, I mean, my favourite track off there is Into the Light. I think that's it's a blinder of a track.
Nice.
And it was interesting. I mean, although I know every band nowadays, no one likes to be called we're this sort of genre, we're this genre. Every single band is now in a unique genre in their own sense, which it's a bit frustrating when you're trying to advise people about if they would like a band. Back in the day, it would be, Metallica's a thrash band and so forth, and you can go, if you like this band, you'll like that band. So if you were to try and say, and if there's another band out there that someone likes, who would it be that would also then like you? So you said System of a Down. Would you say System of a Down fans would like you, or what other bands out there would you say? Not saying that you sound like them, but you think your music would appeal to that audience.
So we like to say System of a Down, but I think that realistically, in terms of what we sound like, I don't think we necessarily sound like System of a Down. They're just our biggest influence in terms of the way that we write the songs and the ideas and the sort of chaos that they bring to it.
And in the band, every member has such a different background somehow, and some so many different influences from every genre, actually, not necessarily just metal or rock music. So it's an interesting blend. But I would say, since Tab is the founder, I would say the most, maybe the closest are System of a Down and Scars on Broadway.
Yeah, Scars on Broadway, I think. Yeah, like a little punkier Scars on Broadway. That's how we describe it.
Right.
But yeah, it's hard, isn't it? It's hard. And I mean, the thing is with these genre things, I've always struggled with like picking out genres. I know nothing about this. It's just I just like the music, whatever it is. So it's hard, and also it's hard setting up gigs and getting bands that are the similar sort of subgenres because everyone's so different and their subgenres are so unique and eclectic to their specific genre. It's like it's mad. But I mean, it's amazing. I love that the music industry sort of branched and there's so many like multi-genred songs and like it's great, man. I love that.
It is incredibly diverse. Everyone seems to be wanting to mix a bit of everything. I think also because we're so exposed. If you went back to the 90s, you would buy an album and that would be your album. You'd listen to that, and then until you got your next bit of pocket money or whatever it was, or your pay, and you'd buy another album, and that would be what you listen to. So you were lucky if in a year you may have bought 12 albums. Now you listen to 12 brand new albums a day because you just hit Spotify and just. So we're absorbing so much music constantly that we would never have had as a kids. But now we want to try and blend everything together, which does mean that when you do your genre listings on your Wikipedia pages, it's about a paragraph long of every different genre that you've got some sort of influence by.
Yeah.
It's always a challenge.
Yeah, it's so tough. Like, and like I say, I'm so bad at picking out the genres and subgenres. I kind of leave that to Antonio because he knows what he's doing.
I mean, sometimes we just end up describing the band with like adjectives.
That's
the problem. Like political, bouncy, catchy,
danceable.
It
doesn't end up being a genre.
Hard time. Yeah, that's precise.
Because that does make a lot of sense. Because when I was looking at your song titles, looking at some of the lyrics in there, I did have that question mark of political agenda. Was the first thing where I was sort of like, there's obviously a political statement. Was this, and then when you talk about System of a Down, kind of ties into there as well with that kind of message that you're trying to put across. So when you talk about politics, when you went into the first EP and then of course the Radical album Animals in 2021, was it with the statement mind of that we're going to write a lot of political driven songs, or was that just a case of what just naturally came out?
Yeah, I think on reflection, like years down the line, I think it was probably just, I mean, I'm still really like politically engaged and active, but I think I still do have this disdain for the political spectrum at the minute. But at the time it was sort of really getting me down on an emotional level, and I couldn't sort of separate what was going on politically in the world and what was going on in my private life.
Right.
And so it took over, and so a lot of my subconscious was thinking about politics and all these crazy things that were going on and how fucked it was and how the system's corrupt and all these people paying for contracts with Serco and all the COVID stuff and the Brexit stuff, really, like the division that was in society. It was just all nasty, and so a lot of that just sort of poured out into the songs, as well as just sort of my mental sort of place at the time. That's sort of how it sort of formed. That's that really.
Because one thing I really liked about Radical Animals, and even I suppose on The Angel as well, was that when I was going through it track by track, and when I do album reviews with the other guys, one of the things we talk about is longevity of the album. Does it feel like the album is dragging because it's going on too long? There's too much sameness. Like you'll get 3 or 4 songs in and they've all felt kind of the same vibe. They're all the same sort of BPM, same guitar tone, and then you get a breakup track, and then you get 3 more songs that sounded like the first 4 on the album. I didn't get that with The Angel, and definitely not with Radical Animals. It felt like every song stood out on their own, and they don't necessarily sound like they were written necessarily at the same time or within the context of an album format. They were just felt like you wrote 10-15 tracks all completely separate with no concept of these are going to be a hardcore song or this is going to be a punk song. It's whatever came out, and then they just went on the album in some form of random order. I went, there you go, there's the album. And I actually like that because it meant that every song was almost like it was on a shuffle. It gave me a different vibe, gave me a different feel. I mean, I noted down there was hardcore in there, definite punk vibe, even elements of like Dead Kennedys, stuff like that. You had real angst. It was the key word. There was definitely trying to get some angst out in your songs, even when they're not the really heavy songs. They still felt like you were trying to get a message and angst about it. Is that kind of how you approached it, with just whatever came out?
Yeah, well, I think to me, songwriting is kind of therapy. So it gives me a chance to sort of like just splurge emotions. And so my brain is chaos. So the album's chaos because it just sort of reflects my mental state 90% of the time. Just like and also musically, I don't sit down and write the same genre every day. Like I write all
Right.
sorts of different genres, and I used to be in a reggae band. I've been in like all sorts of different sort of musical groups, and like did quiet choral singing as a kid. So like single genre stuff really bores me. And that's what I love about System of a Down is how quickly they change it from something super extreme to then beautiful. And I kind of wanted to do that, but obviously with a more punky, angsty, all my
Yeah.
sort of angst that I had at the time, pushing it out into the songs.
Okay. So before I get on to talking about 2023, new album, what the plans are for this year, what's as a band that's obviously out there at the moment, you've gone through COVID-19, the lovely bit where we all got shut down and no one could do anything. Had to go through the writing process. Everyone was doing remote, which the amount of PCs that must have been bought while everyone was trying to work out how to do for anything remotely.
Yeah.
But what's it like now being a band out there as far as the live music scene, booking gigs, attendances for gigs, promotion? How are you finding it as a band out there at the moment?
It was tough, especially after COVID. Like how can I say? It took some time to get back on the street and
Yeah.
actually have some contacts. And here and there, we saw some management company closing actually quite
Yeah,
recently,
yeah.
and we were quite sad. But at the moment, it's going quite good. We did few like sold outs.
Yeah. Past two gigs have been sold out. It's been good for that.
That's great.
But it felt like there was a lull after COVID. People didn't want to go out in public. People didn't want to. Also, people are broke. They spent their savings. They didn't
Yeah.
have disposable income right at the end of COVID. And so it kind of felt like there seemed like a hit. And also, loads of people left London. So a lot of our fan base had just left London, and they're like
Right.
international people, going around to where they are in the world, Sweden, going back to Italy, going back to Germany, wherever it is. And so
Yeah.
we found that we were basically starting from scratch post COVID. A lot of promoters, the management companies that we were with, like all these things, they're just not functioning the way they were before. But it's now people are starting to want to support the grassroots music scene, the live music, and it's like we're seeing an upturn definitely in 20. Go out and experience being in live music again.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I noticed it at the start of last year. We saw like the early part of the season, everyone went mental. Then it started to dwindle off, and there is a question I have around the music scene right now, which is saturation. There is a slight problem that I do see once the festival season kicks in, that suddenly we have lots and lots of gigs, but not enough gig goers.
Mhm.
We noticed that through the season. Now, I don't know if that's something you noticed last year, or that there's. I don't know if it's expendable income is a problem for people to go to that many gigs.
Yeah, I think as well, like because of post-COVID, people there were so many bands, not local bands, big bands that you want to see that you haven't seen in 2 years. Like, I mean, Gojira's
true.
on tonight in London, and Avatar's on Saturday. Like, there's so many huge bands constantly going about that. Those sorts of things, and those tickets are going up because of post-COVID prices, and the merch prices are going up. So no one can. They don't have if they want to see their favorite band, or they could go and see that 3 local gigs. They're going to see their favorite band because they haven't in 2 years. Like it's brutal, but it's just the way it goes. And I think that we're slowly. Summertime's the worst for it because there's the festivals. Everyone can save money and go and see the festivals. So the local gigs really suffer in that time. But I think the rest of the season tends to be okay.
But also,
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. We talked about it on the channel, a couple of months back, and one of the things I raised as my counterpoint, because there was a lot of talk about cost of gig tickets, sheer number of bands going, etc. And I asked the question of, if you went back 10 years, how many albums a year would you have bought? And then you start doing the maths and go, well, I would have probably bought 20 albums. You go, well, that's 10, let's say £10 an album you'd have spent, 200 quid. It's like, how much do you pay for your Spotify a year? Then you start working out the maths and go, how much do you save on your albums? But you're not actually putting that back into going to gigs. So it's one of those ones I don't think, because of Spotify, we're not seeing that change around. But I mean, what's your thoughts on streaming services?
Antonio, what do you think?
It's a touchy subject, this one.
It's interesting though. Well, it depends because, for example, with Apple Music, I was subscribed to Apple Music for quite some time. Apple user, iPhone, and so on. But I think Spotify, even if a lot of people are talking bad about that as a service and as artists, it is a very, very difficult platform. But there's so much there are so many people like sharing their music for very, very cheap, basically.
Yeah.
I can find so many of my favorite soundtrack that no one is listening from Japan or India or whatever. So I think yes, it's getting better in terms of like exposition, because literally anyone nowadays can basically upload a track even without a studio, even with the bare minimum gear, and it's a great thing. It's a great thing, but it's a tool, so it can be used in a bad way as well.
Yeah,
Cool.
I mean, I think I'd say as well, like what the point you make as well with the 20 albums a year you might have bought 10, 15 years ago, and now you can listen to countless albums, so it allows you to discover more music. So it is great for, even it's worse for these bigger bands because they're losing out so much money on the album sales. But when you're smaller and you're getting exposed to these people, you wouldn't get paid much for your money for your music anyway. At this point, it's more the opportunity to. I don't know how many billions of people there are on the Spotify app, but there's so many that you can push your music to. Like, it's the I don't know, the ability to push it to so many people is like, surely that's a good thing. Obviously, it's crap that they pay you tuppence, but this is kind of the world we live in. Everything's subscription based, and music doesn't have the same value it did. Music is something that supports the rest of your, you have to find other revenue streams. Like,
I think that's what a lot of bands are going to have to look at what they're going to do going forward. I've seen a lot of bands going down the route of not releasing albums anymore or EPs. They're doing singles releases through the year just to keep. And that's what everyone's going down the route of. Some people, I'm a personal fan of. I prefer an album or an EP versus singles, just because of the way I absorb music. Because if I only got one single from a band and I listen to it, I'll listen to it for a few days and then I'll forget about the band and move on to someone else. But an album, I'll listen to the whole album, and then if that album locks itself in my brain, that band will lock itself in. But it's very different for each individual generation.
Yeah, I do feel that. I feel that. Sorry, go on.
No, don't worry. That's why we are planning like some sort of middle ground between the two, because somehow music is storytelling, and it's very difficult to tell a story with just one song.
Yes.
It's possible. It's more impactful, I suppose, for many people. That's why the pop industry is going for the single release strategy. But yeah, we still like to tell stories, and we are planning some EPs, and we can talk about that later if you want.
Which is actually the next question. It's our main last question, which is plans for 2023. So if you want to take us straight into that, then talk about what is the plans for this year then.
Yeah, sure. Just to conclude this point, basically, the thing that we are planning are very, very concept driven. So everything will have a theme, and this theme will be explored from different points of views in different songs. So as I was saying, it's kind of a middle way between an album, which is like maybe too much sometimes for like a simple concept, but an EP can let you explore a few things in an interesting way without maybe boring the people that just want 4 songs and just don't sit down, don't have the time to sit down and listen to 15 songs, because we live in a fast-paced world, and unfortunately this is a thing.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. I think that with these tracks, we want to release them all as singles, but then release an album over 2 EPs and then an album overall that overarches of all of them. And so it is going to be marketed in that package of here's an album, here's the sort of, you can buy the CD or whatever, and it's a collection of the tracks for the past year or two. But it's not gonna and the EPs themselves, so we've got the next EP, it's like a very emotional EP. We've had a lot of like emotional stress over the past few years, one song's about cancer and like our mum's struggle with cancer separately, and one's about Alzheimer's and dementia and the struggle with dementia when you're just losing your memories and not being able, the life slipping away from you. And then another one is about losing a companion, like a pet, that means a lot to you, because it's like something that it's such an awful thing to lose, like your close pet, So those are the 3 songs that are really sort of emotionally driven and mean a lot to us, and that's the sort of package that we're going to put them in. Is these 3 sort of like more from the heart songs, and when we have one sort of more bonus track that's just completely out there with a different vibe, but it's more just for live. It's more for live, really. So
right, okay.
It's for fun. It's a great track. Yeah, no, I love it. It's funny, but it's dumb. And then after that, we're going to have the 7 Deadly Sins EP, which we're going to be working on.
That's a big spoiler.
In the works. But we've got a few songs down for that, but we're not booked the studio or anything yet. But a work in progress, and that's the
Work in
more
progress.
sort of deep conceptual sort of album that we're going to do, or EP, 7 tracks, 8 tracks, something like that.
Yeah.
So
It's gonna be hard if you do less than 7 tracks. It's gonna be less than 7 deadly sins, unless you're merging them, I guess.
yeah, well, yeah.
It's gonna have to be 7, I think.
Yeah, probably. But I was thinking maybe more. This is it, maybe more with overarching sort of
A bonus sin.
yeah,
scenes.
but yeah, maybe other sins that aren't in the deadly sins,
From
Yeah.
Yeah, from our deepest, darkest, secretive layers,
And so, finally, what have you got coming up as far as live shows that people can come and check you out at?
Our next 2 dates that we have booked are in April. We've got a few things. We've got to film some music videos and stuff before then. 7th of April, Nottingham Tap and Tumbler, which will be actually a great venue. We love playing there. It's going to be like our 3rd gig there. It's going to be great. You played there before as well, didn't you? So this will be our 2nd gig with Antonio there, so that's going to be great. And then we've got the Metal to the Masses quarterfinal.
It's important.
That's the big one in London, 9th of April, Fiddler's Elbow. We want to get as many votes as possible.
Yep.
Get through to that. Bloodstock. Yeah, it's going to be great on the new Blood stage. Hopefully we get through.
Fingers crossed.
That's the one. That's it. Yeah, that's what we've got planned.
Well, congrats for getting to the quarterfinals, because I know how hard it is as well in the heats, especially depending on the band. London heats are obviously very, very tough. I remember them from last year. So, yeah, best of luck in the quarterfinals, and hopefully you do get to the new Blood stage. It's a great experience for those that manage to get to play Bloodstock. Well, just finally, all I can say is big thank you for obviously spending some time with me on the channel. Obviously, when you get the new EP, send it over to us. We'll do a lovely review of it on the A.D.K channel for you. And obviously, same with the music videos. We love checking out music videos. As long as you don't mind honest feedback, it's
no, that's what we want.
Like. We get criticised by people for being too honest sometimes, but we're like, it's better to be honest. Give you
100% better to be honest, man.
But yeah, just big thank you for spending the time, and please everyone go check out them bloody kids. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all later.
Cheers. See you in a bit.
Bye.